The call came at 3:47 a.m. on December 23rd, jolting Roy Hartwell from the deepest sleep he'd had in weeks. 28 years as a Kansas City firefighter had trained him to recognize the sound of genuine panic in a dispatcher's voice, but hearing it directed at his own address made his blood run cold. "Roy, we've got units responding to 1247 Maple Street." The voice crackled through his old department radio that he still kept by his bedside. "Structure fire, fully involved. That's your address, isn't it?" Roy was already moving, his body responding with the muscle memory of 3 decades of emergency response. But this time, he wasn't rushing toward the fire. He was trapped inside it. "Linda! Linda!" Roy shouted, smoke already thick enough to sting his eyes as he ran down the hallway of their modest 2-story home. "Kids! Get up now!" 15-year-old Jake appeared first, stumbling out of his room with the confused look of someone pulled from deep sleep into a nightmare. "Dad, what's fire? Get your sister. Get out of the house now!" Roy pushed Jake toward 9-year-old Lily's room while he continued to Linda's bedside, where his wife of 18 years was already coughing from the smoke that was pouring under their bedroom door. The next 6 minutes felt like 6 hours. Roy's trained eye could read the fire's behavior. It had started in the garage and was moving fast, too fast, consuming the house with an intensity that spoke of accelerants and deliberate ignition. But there was no time to analyze what his experience was telling him. There was only time to save his family. Jake carried Lily out first, the 9-year-old clutching her stuffed elephant, while tears streamed down her face. Linda followed, supporting Roy's elderly mother who had been staying with them for the holidays. Roy came last, looking back once at the home where he'd raised his children, where he'd planned to spend his retirement, where every corner held memories of a life carefully built over 2 decades. By the time the fire trucks arrived, Roy's former colleagues responding to what they didn't yet know was one of their own. The house was a total loss. The Hartwell family stood in their neighbor's yard, wearing only pajamas and coats borrowed from strangers, watching 20 years of their lives turn to ash and smoke. "Roy," Captain Mike Torres approached, his face grim beneath his helmet. "I'm sorry, brother. We got here as fast as we could, but—" "I know," Roy said quietly, his arm around Linda's shoulders as she sobbed silently. "I know you did everything you could." What Roy didn't say, what he couldn't yet process enough to put into words, was what his experienced eye had already confirmed. This wasn't an accident. The burn pattern, the speed of the spread, the way the fire had moved through the house. Someone had deliberately destroyed his home. Someone had tried to kill his family. In the days that followed, the Hartwells discovered the devastating reality of being uninsured fire victims. Roy's firefighter pension was modest, and Linda's nursing salary had been stretched thin even before the fire. The house insurance had lapsed 2 months earlier when Roy had been forced to choose between the premium and Lily's asthma medication. It was a choice that had seemed obvious at the time, his daughter's health versus a policy that might never be needed. Now, staying in a cramped motel room paid for by the firefighters' union emergency fund, that choice felt catastrophic. "Dad," Jake said on their 3rd night in the motel, "some kids at school started a GoFundMe for us. It's raised about $800 so far." Roy felt the familiar tightness in his chest, the same feeling he'd experienced every time a fellow firefighter had offered help over the past few days. Pride warring with desperation, independence colliding with the stark reality that his family needed charity to survive. That's good, son," Roy managed. "Tell them thank you." What Jake didn't tell his father was that he'd also made a TikTok video, filmed on his phone in the motel bathroom while his family slept. In it, he'd shown pictures of their burned house, their few salvaged possessions, and his little sister's drawings of their old home. The video was raw, honest, and heartbreaking. A 15-year-old boy trying to be strong while his world fell apart. "Hi, I'm Jake Hartwell," he'd said into the camera, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes. "3 days ago, my family lost everything in a fire. My dad was a firefighter for 28 years, and he spent his career saving other people's homes. Now, we need help saving ours." The video had been posted for less than 24 hours when it reached Travis Kelce's phone. The NFL star was scrolling through social media during a quiet evening at home when Jake's face appeared on his screen. Something about the kid's composure, the way he held himself together while describing losing it, made Travis stop scrolling and watch the entire video. Then he watched it again. By the time Travis had seen the video for the third time, he was already making phone calls. His assistant, his agent, and his financial advisor all received the same message. I need you to find out everything you can about the Hartwell family in Kansas City tonight. What Travis learned over the next few hours was that Roy Hartwell wasn't just any firefighter. He was a decorated veteran who had saved dozens of lives during his career, including pulling 3 children from a burning apartment building in 2019, an act of heroism that had left him with permanent lung damage and forced his early retirement. Linda Hartwell worked the night shift at Children's Mercy Hospital, often staying late to comfort scared children whose parents couldn't be there. She'd volunteered at the hospital for 5 years before being hired, and her colleagues described her as someone who treated every patient like her own child. Jake was an honor student who had been working part-time at a local grocery store to help with family expenses. Lily was recovering from a severe asthma attack that had hospitalized her just 2 weeks before the fire, the medical bills from which had forced the family to let their insurance lapse. They were exactly the kind of family that Travis had grown up believing represented the best of America, hardworking, selfless, and struggling despite doing everything right. As Travis sat in his mansion in Leawood, looking out at a view that cost more than most people made in a decade, he made a decision that would change the Hartwell family's life forever. But what he didn't know was that his decision would also put them all in danger, because Roy Hartwell's house hadn't burned by accident, and the people who had set that fire were still out there, still watching, still waiting for the right moment to finish what they'd started. The Hartwell family's nightmare was just beginning, and Travis Kelce was about to walk directly into the middle of it. Jake Hartwell was stocking shelves at Morrison's Grocery when his phone exploded with notification. He'd been working double shifts since the fire, trying to earn money for his family while keeping up with his schoolwork. The TikTok video he'd posted had gained some traction, a few thousand views, several $100s added to their GoFundMe, but nothing that would change their situation dramatically until now. "Dude, your phone is going crazy," his co-worker Mason said, nodding toward Jake's device that was buzzing non-stop from the customer service counter. "You sure you can't answer it?" Jake glanced at his supervisor, who was helping a customer 3 aisles away, then quickly checked his phone. His TikTok notifications showed numbers he'd never seen before. 847K views, 92K liked, 15K shared. The comments section was moving so fast, he couldn't read individual messages, but it was the direct message notification that made his hands shake. "Hi, Jake. This is Travis Kelce. Can we talk? I need to take my break," Jake told me, his voice barely steady. In the store's break room, Jake stared at the verified checkmark next to Travis Kelce's name. The message was simple, but seemed impossible. "Hey, Jake, I saw your video about your family. I'd like to help. Can you call me at this number? Travis." Jake's first instinct was that it was fake, but the account had millions of followers, verified status, and when Jake scrolled through the post, they matched everything he'd seen about Travis Kelce on the news. This was real. With trembling fingers, Jake dialed the number. "Jake?" The voice that answered was unmistakably the same one Jake had heard in countless interviews and commercials. "Mr. Kelce, this is really you? It's really me, kid. And call me Travis. I saw your video, and I want to help your family. Where are you right now?" Jake explained about working at the grocery store, about the motel, about his parents' pride making it hard for them to accept help. Travis listened without interrupting, asking occasional questions that showed he'd already researched their situation thoroughly. "Jake, I want to meet your family," Travis said finally, "but I want to do this right. Your parents don't know about the video going viral, do they?" "No, sir. They don't really use social media, and I didn't want to get their hopes up if nothing came of it." "Smart kid. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show up at your motel tonight around 7 o'clock. I'll tell them I heard about your situation through a friend at the fire department. That way, it doesn't seem like you went behind their backs asking for help." That evening, Roy Hartwell was helping Lily with her homework on one of the motel's small beds when someone knocked on their door. Through the peephole, he saw a tall man in a Chiefs hoodie and baseball cap. "Can I help you?" Roy asked through the door. "Mr. Hartwell? My name is Travis Kelce. I play for the Chief, and I heard about what happened to your family. I was wondering if I could talk to you for a minute." Roy opened the door, his expression skeptical. In his years as a firefighter, he'd encountered his share of people who showed up after tragedy, some genuine, others looking for publicity or personal gain. "Mr. Kelce," Roy said carefully, "I appreciate you stopping by, but we're managing fine." Travis smiled, the kind of genuine expression that had made him beloved by fans across the country. "I'm sure you are, sir, but I was hoping you might let me help anyway. Could I come in for just a few minutes?" Linda looked up from where she was sitting with Lily, recognizing the famous athlete, but unsure why he was at their motel room door. Jake tried to act surprised, though his heart was pounding. "Please," Travis added, "I promise I'm not here for publicity or photos. I just want to help a family that's been through hell." Roy stepped aside, and Travis entered the cramped motel room that had been home to the Hartwell family for 6 days. In one glance, he took in the details that the news stories hadn't captured. Lily's inhaler on the nightstand, Linda's nursing scrubs hanging in the tiny bathroom, Jake's homework spread across the small table, Roy's firefighter medals in a salvaged shoebox. "This is my wife, Linda, my son Jake, and my daughter Lily," Roy said, his voice formal but not unfriendly. Travis knelt down to Lily's level, his expression gentle. "Hi, Lily. I heard you lost your house. That must have been really scary." Lily nodded solemnly, clutching her stuffed elephant. "It was loud and smoky, but Daddy saved us." "Your daddy's a hero," Travis agreed, looking up at Roy. "I've been reading about your career, Mr. Hartwell. 28 years saving people's lives. That's incredible." Roy's posture softened slightly. "Just doing my job." "Actually," Travis said, standing back up, "that's not true. I've talked to some guys at the department. What you did at that apartment fire in 2019, pulling those kids out when the building was about to collapse, that wasn't just your job. That was heroism." Linda reached for Roy's hand, recognizing the slight change in her husband's breathing that happened whenever someone mentioned that fire. The lung damage from that rescue had forced his early retirement and reduced their income significantly. "Mr. Kelce," Linda said diplomatically, "we appreciate the visit, but we don't want to take up your time." "Actually, Mrs. Hartwell, I was hoping I could take up more of your time," Travis interrupted gently. "See, I've got a problem, and I think you might be able to help me solve it." The family exchanged confused glances. "I've been looking for a way to give back to the Kansas City community," Travis continued, "specifically to first responders and their families. I want to start a foundation, but I need a family to be my first case study, to help me understand what resources are really needed and how to deliver them effectively." Roy's expression grew skeptical again. "Mr. Kelce, that sounds like a very generous way of offering us charity." "It's not charity, Mr. Hartwell. It's a partnership. I need to learn from your experience so I can help other families in the future. And in exchange, I'd like to help your family get back on your feet. But I need you to be my advisor, to tell me what works and what doesn't." Travis pulled out his phone and showed them a website that had been live for exactly 3 hours. The First Responders Family Foundation. Jake recognized the logo. His TikTok video had provided Travis's team with photos of Roy's firefighter gear. "This foundation is real," Travis said. "I've already put $2 million in, but I need a family to help me learn how to use that money effectively. Would you be willing to be that family?" The room fell silent. $2 million was more money than the Hartwells had ever imagined, let alone been offered. "What exactly would that involve?" Linda asked cautiously. "First, we'd get you into temporary housing, a real house, not a motel. Then we'd work together to figure out what you need to rebuild your life. A new house, new belongings, financial security. But more importantly, we document the process so I can create a blueprint for helping other first responder families." Travis paused, studying their faces. "And there's something else. Something I learned about your family that I think you should know." He pulled up Jake's TikTok video on his phone. The family watched in stunned silence as Jake's face appeared on screen, telling their story to what was now over 1 million viewers. "Jake," Linda whispered, looking at her son with a mixture of pride and surprise. "Your son's video has been viewed by over 1 million people," Travis said, He raised over $12,000 for your family in less than 24 hours. But more than that, he showed me exactly why you're the right family to help me launch this foundation." Roy looked at his son, seeing not the child he'd been protecting, but the young man who had stepped up to protect his family when it mattered most. "Jake," Roy said quietly, "why didn't you tell us?" "Because I knew you'd say we didn't need help," Jake replied honestly. "But Dad, we do need help. And now we can help other people too." Travis watched the family process this revelation, understanding that he was witnessing something more valuable than any touchdown pass, a family choosing to trust each other and a stranger with their future. "So," Travis said finally, "what do you say? Want to help me change some lives?" Roy looked at Linda, then at his children, then back at Travis. For the first time since the fire, he saw something other than desperation in his family's eyes. He saw hope. "Mr. Kelce," Roy said, extending his hand, "I think we'd be honored to help you with your foundation." As Travis shook Roy's hand, none of them knew that across town, someone was watching Jake's viral video with very different intentions. Someone who recognized Roy Hartwell's face and realized that the fire hadn't accomplished what it was supposed to. The Hartwell family's nightmare wasn't over. In fact, it was about to get much worse. But first, they would experience something beautiful: the overwhelming generosity of a stranger who was about to become family. 3 weeks later, Travis Kelce stood in the driveway of a 4-bedroom house in Overland Park, watching the Hartwell family see their new temporary home for the first time. The house, which Travis had purchased and furnished in record time, sat on a quiet street with good school and a neighborhood that felt like the Kansas suburbs Roy and Linda had dreamed of when they were young. "This is ours?" Lily asked, her small hand clasped in her mother's as they walked up the front path. "For as long as you need it," Travis confirmed, handing the keys to Roy. "And if you decide you want to stay permanently, we can make that happen too." The interior was perfect, not ostentatious or celebrity fancy, but warm and lived in, as if the family had chosen every piece themselves, which, in a way, they had. Travis's team had spent days following Linda and the kids through furniture stores, noting what caught their attention, what made Lily smile, what made Jake linger. Roy's office was set up with a desk, filing cabinets, and everything he'd need to help run the First Responders Family Foundation from home. Linda's reading nook by the window stocked with the nursing journals she'd mentioned missing from their old house. Jake's room had a gaming setup that made his eyes go wide. Lily's room was decorated with unicorn and had a window seat where she could read with her stuffed elephant. "Travis," Linda said, her voice thick with emotion as they finished the tour, "this is too much. We can't accept all of it." "Mrs. Hartwell," Travis replied gently, "remember our agreement. You're not accepting charity. You're my partners in the foundation. This house is an investment in our mission to help other families." Over the past 3 weeks, that mission had already begun to take shape. The foundation had received over 500 applications for assistance from first responder families across the country. Roy had thrown himself into the work with the same dedication he'd brought to firefighting, reviewing each case, coordinating with local resources, and developing protocols for efficient help delivery. "Dad's been different since we started working with you," Jake told Travis, as they stood in the backyard, watching Roy and Linda explore the garden that Linda had mentioned wanting their old house. "Different how? He has a purpose again. After he retired because of his lungs, he felt useless. Now he's helping people again, just in a different way." Travis nodded, understanding more than Jake realized. After his own struggles with depression and the pressure of professional sports, Travis had found that helping others was often the best medicine for feelings of helplessness. What Travis didn't know was that Roy had been carrying a secret that was eating him alive. The lung damage from the 2019 apartment fire had been worse than he'd admitted to his family. Much worse. The recent medical tests his doctor had insisted on revealed the truth he'd been dreading: lung cancer, aggressive and advanced, likely triggered by years of smoke inhalation, but accelerated by the damage from that final rescue. Roy had received the diagnosis the day before they moved into the new house. The oncologist had been blunt: without immediate treatment, he had perhaps 6 months. With treatment, maybe 18 months, possibly longer with luck. But treatment would mean chemotherapy, weakness, inability to work, even the foundation work that had given him new purpose. It would mean watching his family's joy over their new beginning turn into grief over his ending. and it would mean medical bills that would consume the foundation's investment in their future. So Roy had made a decision. He wouldn't tell them. Not yet. Not while they were finally happy again. "Travis," Roy said that evening as they sat on the back porch after Linda and the kids had gone inside, "I want you to know what this means to us. Not just the house or the foundation, but the way you've treated us like family." "You are family," Travis replied simply. "That's not just something nice to say. I mean it." Roy nodded, studying the man who had transformed their lives. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Sure. Why us? Really, you could have helped any family, started your foundation with anyone. Why the Hartwells?" Travis was quiet for a long moment, considering how much truth to share. "Because Jake's video reminded me of something I'd forgotten. When I was 15, my family went through a rough patch. My dad lost his job. We almost lost our house. I remember feeling responsible for fixing, like it was my job to be the man of the family." He paused, remembering. "A stranger helped us. Someone who had no reason to care about our family, but did anyway. That stranger changed our trajectory, and I've never forgotten it. When I saw Jake in that video, trying to be strong for your family, I saw myself, and I thought, maybe I could be that stranger for your family." "You've been much more than that," Roy said. What Roy didn't say was that he'd spent the afternoon calling life insurance company, trying to increase his policy without triggering medical exams that would reveal his diagnosis. He'd also drafted a letter to Travis, explaining his condition and asking him to continue watching over Linda and the kids after he was gone. The next morning brought news that would change everything again. Roy was reviewing foundation applications when his phone rang with a call from Detective Sarah Morrison of the Kansas City Police Department. "Mr. Hartwell, I'm calling about the fire at your home. We've concluded our investigation, and I need to speak with you in person. Can you come to the station this afternoon?" "You found something?" Roy asked, though his firefighter's instincts had already told him what she was going to say. "We found evidence that the fire was deliberately set. Mr. Hartwell, someone tried to burn down your house with your family inside." Roy felt the room spin around him. He'd known it wasn't an accident, but hearing it confirmed made it real in a way that was terrifying. "Do you know who?" "We have some leads, but I need to ask you some questions first. Mr. Hartwell, have you received any threats recently? Anyone who might want to hurt you or your family?" Roy's mind immediately went to the incident that had ended his career early. The apartment fire in 2019 hadn't just damaged his lungs, it had also exposed a scheme by the building's owner to collect insurance money by allowing the structure to deteriorate to dangerous levels. Roy's testimony had led to criminal charges and a conviction that cost the owner millions. "There might be someone," Roy said quietly. That afternoon, at the police station, Detective Morrison laid out evidence that made Roy's blood run cold. Security footage from a neighboring business showed a man pouring accelerant around Roy's garage at 2 a.m. on December 23rd. The man's face was partially visible, and Roy recognized him immediately. Marcus Webb, the son of the apartment building owner Roy had helped convict. Marcus had made threats during his father's trial, and now it appeared he'd followed through on them. "We're issuing a warrant for his arrest," Detective Morrison said. "But Mr. Hartwell, I need you to understand. Mr. Webb is still out there, and he may not be finished. We're going to need to provide protection for your family." Roy thought about Linda, Jake, and Lily in their new house, finally feeling safe and happy. He thought about Travis, who had unknowingly painted a target on the Hartwell family by making them visible and newsworthy. And he thought about the cancer growing in his lung, the secret that was killing him slowly, while Marcus Webb threatened to kill his family quickly. That evening, Roy called Travis and asked him to come over immediately. "There's something I need to tell you," Roy said when Travis arrived, "something that changes everything." As Roy explained about the arson investigation and the threat to his family, Travis felt the familiar surge of protectiveness that had driven him to help the Hartwells in the first place. But this time, the threat was real and immediate. "We'll get through this," Travis said firmly, "whatever it takes." "Travis, there's more," Roy said, his voice breaking. "There's something else I haven't told anyone." Roy pulled out the medical reports and handed them to Travis. As the NFL star read about the lung cancer diagnosis, his expression shifted from confusion to devastation. "Roy, how long have you known?" 3 weeks, since the day before we moved into the house. "And you haven't told Linda? The kids?" How can I? Roy asked, tears finally coming. They just got their lives back. How can I tell them I'm dying? Travis set down the medical reports and looked at his friend, because that's what Roy had become, despite the short time they'd known each other. Roy, you're not going to die. Not on my watch. We're going to fight this cancer the same way we're going to fight Marcus Webb. Together. Travis, you don't understand. No, you don't understand, Travis interrupted. You saved 3 kids' lives and destroyed your lungs doing it. You spent your career running into burning buildings to save strangers. Now let me save you. That night, Travis made phone calls that would set in motion a plan to protect the Hartwell family from threats both criminal and medical. He contacted private security firms, reached out to the best oncologists in the country, and began developing a strategy that would either save Roy Hartwell's life or ensure his family was protected forever. But what Travis didn't know was that Marcus Webb had been watching the house, studying their routines, planning his next move. And unlike the first fire, this time he wasn't planning to give the family a chance to escape. The foundation Travis had built to help the Hartwells was about to face its greatest test, and the stakes couldn't be higher. The attack came at 4:23 a.m. on a Tuesday in February, exactly 7 weeks after the Hartwell family had moved into their new home. Linda was working the night shift at the hospital. Jake was asleep in his room, and Lily was having one of her frequent nightmares about fires when the security alarm Travis had installed began screaming. Roy was awake in an instant. The combination of firefighter training and recent paranoia keeping him on high alert, even in sleep. Through his bedroom window, he could see a figure moving around the perimeter of the house, and the motion sensors Travis's security team had installed were lighting up like a Christmas display. "Jake!" Roy shouted, running to his son's room while simultaneously calling 911. "Get Lily, and get to the safe room now!" The safe room was Travis's idea, a reinforced interior closet with its own phone line, water, and supply. At the time, it had seemed like overkill. Now it felt like salvation. Jake grabbed his sister from her bed, both kids moving with the practiced efficiency of a family that had already lost everything once. They made it to the safe room just as the first window exploded. This time, Marcus Webb wasn't relying on a slow-burning fire. He'd brought Molotov cocktail and the intention to ensure no one escaped alive. 911, what's your emergency? This is Roy Hartwell at 1847 Elm Street in Overland Park. Someone is firebombing my house with my children inside. Please send everyone. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Travis had coordinated with local police to ensure any emergency at the Hartwell address would receive priority response. Fire trucks, police cars, and an ambulance were en route within 90 seconds. But 90 seconds was enough time for Marcus Webb to throw 4 more firebombs and set the house's first floor ablaze. Roy made a decision that his damaged lungs and weakened body weren't equipped for. He ran into the flames to make sure his children were safe in the safe room. The smoke hit his compromised respiratory system like a physical blow, sending him into a coughing fit that brought up blood. By the time the first responders arrived, Roy was unconscious in the hallway outside the safe room, his body having finally succumbed to the lung damage he'd been hiding. Jake and Lily were safe but traumatized, listening to their father's labored breathing through the safe room door but unable to help him. Travis received the call at 4:31 a.m. and broke every speed limit between his house and the hospital, where Roy was being treated for smoke inhalation and respiratory failure. He arrived to find Linda in the waiting room, still in her nursing scrub, holding Jake and Lily while they all cried. "The doctors say his lungs couldn't handle the smoke," Linda said, her voice hollow with shock. "They say there was pre-existing damage that made it worse." "Travis, they're talking about putting him on a ventilator." Travis felt his heart break as he realized Roy's cancer secret was about to be exposed in the worst possible way. Mrs. Hartwell, Dr. Elizabeth Chen, the attending physician, approached with the careful expression medical professionals used to deliver devastating news. "We need to discuss your husband's condition. The smoke inhalation has revealed some underlying issue that we need to address immediately." Linda stood up, instinctively knowing that her world was about to change again. "What kind of issue?" "Your husband has advanced lung cancer. Based on the progression, I'd estimate he's known about it for several weeks, possibly months. Mrs. Hartwell, this is a very serious situation. The words hit Linda like physical blows. Her husband was dying, and he hadn't told her. The man she'd been married to for 18 years, who she'd trusted with everything, had been facing death alone while she planned their future in their new house. How long? She whispered. Without treatment. Weeks to months. With aggressive treatment, we might be able to extend that significantly. But Mrs. Hartwell, the smoke inhalation has accelerated his decline. We need to make decisions quickly. Jake looked up at Travis, his 15-year-old mind trying to process too many adult realities at once. Is Dad going to die? Travis knelt down to Jake's level, the same way he'd done with Lily the first night they met. Your dad is the strongest man I know. We're going to fight this with everything we have. But privately, Travis was making calculations that terrified him. Roy's cancer? The arson attacks, the trauma to the family, the foundation he'd created to help them was becoming inadequate for the scope of problems they faced. Over the next 72 hours, while Roy remained unconscious and on a ventilator, Travis orchestrated a response that would have impressed military commanders. He hired a private security firm to guard the hospital room around the clock. He brought in the country's leading lung cancer specialists for consultation. He arranged for Linda to take extended leave from work while maintaining her full salary. He enrolled Jake and Lily in counseling with therapists who specialized in childhood trauma. And most importantly, he used his platform and resources to ensure Marcus Webb was found. I'm offering a $100,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of Marcus Webb, Travis announced during a press conference that every major news outlet covered. This man has tried to murder a family twice. He needs to be stopped. The announcement worked. Webb was arrested 18 hours later at a motel outside Kansas City, caught when someone recognized him from the footage Travis had shared and called the police. But the arrest, while providing some relief, couldn't solve the larger problem. Roy Hartwell was dying, and his family was watching it happen. When Roy finally woke up 4 days later, the first thing he saw was Travis sitting beside his hospital bed, reading foundation applications on his laptop. "You're supposed to be preparing for the playoff," Roy said weakly, his voice barely audible through the oxygen mask. "Playoffs can wait," Travis replied, closing the laptop. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck. And like my wife is never going to forgive me for lying to her about the cancer." Travis pulled his chair closer to the bed. "Roy, she's scared and hurt, but she loves you. What she can't understand is why you thought you had to face this alone. Because I didn't want to destroy their happiness. They'd just gotten their lives back. And instead, you almost died in a fire while trying to protect them from a secret that was killing you anyway." Travis's voice was gentle but firm. "Roy, you can't protect people by lying to them." Roy closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his decision. "What happens now? Now we fight, all of us, together. No more secret." That afternoon, Linda entered Roy's hospital room with Jake and Lily. The conversation that followed was one of the hardest things Travis had ever witnessed, but also one of the most beautiful. A family choosing to face an impossible situation with honesty, love, and unity. "Daddy," Lily said, crawling carefully onto the hospital bed. "Travis says you're sick like I was when I had asthma, but worse." "That's right, sweetheart, but the doctors are going to help me get better." "Promise?" Lily asked. Roy looked at Linda, then at Jake, then at Travis, who nodded encouragingly. "I promise. I'm going to fight as hard as I can to get better. And I promise I'll never lie to you about important things again." Jake, who had been quiet throughout the conversation, finally spoke up. "Dad, are you going to be able to help with the foundation?" The question surprised everyone, but Roy understood what his son was really asking. Would their lives have meaning and purpose, even in the face of this crisis? "I'm going to help as much as I can for as long as I can," Roy said, "and when I can't anymore, you and Mom and Travis will keep helping people. That's what families do." As the Hartwell family held each other in that hospital room, Travis stepped outside to make another series of phone calls. The foundation was about to face its biggest test, and Travis was determined to prove that some problems were too important to give up on, no matter how impossible they seemed. Marcus Webb was in custody, but Roy's cancer remained. The next chapter of their story would determine whether love and resources could overcome biology and time. Travis had never faced a fourth down situation this important, and failure wasn't an option. 6 months later, Roy Hartwell stood on the stage at Arrowhead Stadium, speaking to a crowd of 30,000 people who had gathered for the First Responders Family Foundation's inaugural fundraising event. His voice was stronger than it had been in the hospital, though the toll of aggressive cancer treatment was visible in his thinner frame and the oxygen tank he kept nearby. "When my house burned down on December 23rd, Roy began, his words carrying clearly through the stadium's sounds. I thought my family had lost everything. I was wrong. We'd lost our possession, but we found something much more valuable. We learned that we're never truly..." In the VIP section, Linda sat with Jake and Lily, all three wearing matching foundation t-shirts. Lily, now 10 years old, was no longer afraid of fires. Extensive therapy and her father's survival had helped her process the trauma. Jake, 16 and taller than his mother, had become the foundation's youngest volunteer coordinator, managing social media outreach to families in crisis. Travis stood beside Roy on stage, but this wasn't his show. Over the past 6 months, as Roy underwent experimental treatment at MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, all expenses covered by the foundation, Travis had gradually shifted from savior to partner to family member. "The doctors told us 6 months ago that I had weeks to live," Roy continued, his voice growing stronger with emotion. "But Travis Kelce didn't accept that prognosis. He flew me to Houston, connected me with Dr. Maria Santos, and funded a treatment that wasn't covered by insurance." The crowd erupted in applause, but Travis shook his head, gesturing for quiet. This was Roy's moment. "The experimental immunotherapy worked better than anyone expected," Roy said, placing his hand over his heart. "Last week, my scans showed no detectable cancer. I'm in complete remission." The stadium exploded with cheers that rivaled any touchdown celebration. But Roy wasn't finished. "Travis didn't just save my life. He taught my family something that every first responder family needs to learn. It's okay to let people help you. It's okay to be vulnerable. And it's okay to admit that sometimes even heroes need rescuing." What the crowd didn't know was the full extent of what Travis had done over the past 6 months. Beyond funding Roy's treatment, he had quietly revolutionized how the foundation operated. Instead of simply writing checks to families in crisis, Travis had created a comprehensive support system. The foundation now employed 12 full-time staff members, including Roy as executive director and Linda as family services coordinator. They had partnerships with major hospitals for medical treatment, with construction companies for home rebuilding, and with counseling services for trauma support. Most importantly, they had developed a network of foundation family, previous recipients, who now helped new families navigate their crisis. The Hartwells had become the first family in this network, using their experience to guide others through similar disasters. "But tonight isn't just about my family," Roy said, gesturing to a large screen that began showing photos and video. "Tonight is about the 847 families we've helped over the past 8 months. Firefighters, police officers, EMTs, military families, all people who spend their lives helping others and sometimes need help themselves." The video montage was powerful. Families moving into new homes, children starting at new school, parents returning to work after medical crises, first responders getting back on their feet after line-of-duty injuries. "Marcus Webb tried to destroy my family twice," Roy said, his voice hardening slightly. "He's now serving 15 years in federal prison for arson and attempted murder, but his hatred created something beautiful. It showed us that the opposite of destruction isn't just survival, it's growth." Travis stepped forward to the microphone, his arm around Roy's shoulders in a gesture that had become natural over their months of friendship. "When I first met the Hartwell family, Travis, I thought I was helping them. What I didn't realize was that they were saving me. Roy taught me that true strength isn't about being invincible. It's about letting people see your vulnerabilities and asking for help when you need it." Travis paused, looking out at the crowd that included his teammates, family members, and celebrities who had joined the foundation's board. "Tonight, we're announcing the next phase of our work. The First Responders Family Foundation is expanding nationally. We're opening offices in 10 cities, and we're launching the Roy Hartwell Emergency Response Program, a 24-hour hotline that connects first responder family to immediate assistance during crisis." The announcement brought another wave of applause, but Travis had one more surprise. "And we're announcing something else." Jake Hartwell, who started this entire journey with a TikTok video asking for help, has been accepted to the University of Kansas on a full scholarship to study emergency management. His goal is to become the Foundation's future director and expand our work internationally. Jake stood up in the VIP section, embarrassed but proud, as the stadium gave him a standing ovation. The 15-year-old who had once stocked grocery store shelves to help his family was now planning a career dedicated to helping other families in crisis. But the most powerful moment came when Roy called his family to join him on stage. "Linda, Jake, Lily, come up here," Roy said, his voice thick with emotion. As the Hartwell family stood together on the stage at Arrowhead Stadium, Travis stepped back, letting them have their moment. The man who had saved their lives was content to watch from the sideline as they claimed their victory. 8 months ago, Roy said, his arm around Linda while Jake and Lily stood beside them. "We were strangers living in a motel, too proud to ask for help and too scared to hope for better. Tonight, we're standing in an NFL stadium, surrounded by thousands of people who believe in helping others because one person decided our story mattered." Roy turned to Travis, his voice carrying across the stadium. "Travis, you didn't just give us money or resources. You gave us something more valuable. You gave us the courage to believe that our worst moment could become our greatest opportunity to help others." The evening concluded with an announcement that stunned even Travis. The foundation had raised $12 million that night, enough to help thousands of additional families and fund research into better support systems for first responders. As the crowd filed out of Arrowhead Stadium, Travis and the Hartwell family stood on the field, looking up at the lights that had witnessed countless victories. But this victory was different. It wasn't about scoring points or winning games. It was about proving that sometimes the most extraordinary things happen when ordinary people decide to show up for each other. "So, what's next?" Jake asked, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who had learned that asking for help was a sign of strength, not weakness. "Next," Roy said, looking at his family and then at Travis, "we keep helping people. We keep showing up. And we keep proving that there's no problem too big when enough people decide to solve it together." 3 years later, the First Responders Family Foundation would help its 10,000th family. Roy's cancer would remain in remission, though he'd never fully recover from the lung damage that had nearly killed him. Jake would graduate summa cum laude from KU and take over daily operations of the foundation. Lily would start her own nonprofit, focused on helping children process trauma through art therapy. And Travis Kelce would continue playing football at the highest level. But when asked about his greatest achievement, he would always point to a burning house in Kansas City, a family that refused to give up, and the proof that some touchdowns happen off the field. The viral video that started it all, Jake's desperate plea for help, would eventually be viewed by over 50 million people. The real impact couldn't be measured in views or likes. It could only be measured in the lives that had been saved, the families that had been rebuilt, and the understanding that sometimes losing everything is just the beginning of finding something better. Marcus Webb had tried to destroy the Hartwell family twice. Instead, his hatred had created a foundation that would help tens of thousands of families rebuild their lives after tragedy. Sometimes, the most beautiful things grow from the darkest places. And sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to say, "I can help," for everything to change. The house fire that had destroyed everything the Hartwells owned had become the spark that lit something much brighter. Proof that in a world that often feels divided and hopeless, ordinary people are still capable of extraordinary love.